Okay, it's on. We're on. Science time. That's exactly right. The co-star you will find is this I have made out of Legos, and I'm going to tell you about this. And I really wanted it to be on video, so I found a way to shoehorn it into this video. But I made this little guy so that I could spill my coffee, barely. But I've got two things. I'm used to only having one thing. And I've got two things. I got T-Rex and I got coffee. So let me drink out my coffee a little. I want to tell you about this, and I want to tell it to you. Tell it to you. Tell the show and tell. Is the mic picking up? Tiana, it is? Okay. I want to tell it to you as I ponder about my mistakes and as I write on the whiteboard that today we are talking about natural selection. I'm going to call it natural selection and speciation. Because, as I said before, we're doing the discussion for both Lesson 2 and 3 together. They're assigned separately. We'll do them as if they're separate units, except that we're going to do the discussion together. And one of the reasons for that is I don't think either of them is going to take that long. What you missed, Ada, is I wrote this on the board, and I spilled coffee on the floor. So that's really good. Because I had my coffee in my offhand, you see. I was dual wielding. I had the coffee in the offhand. You need to watch your profanity. Okay. To start this out, so we're talking about today natural selection and speciation. We're going to use the visual model of this Tyrannosaurus Rex Lego set, and our objective is to investigate stability and change phenomena in natural selection and speciation. So if we could please write that down. Evaluate, was that the right verb? Investigate, one of the 8s. Investigate, so please write the objective down with me as I write it down. As I erase and then write it down. Investigate, as I spell it right. Investigate stability. Am I doing it right? Stability
and change phenomena in natural selection.
Investigate stability and change phenomena in natural selection, and I'm going to put plus speciation. Hey, so one of the drawbacks of having a kind of long objective is that you later have to write the kind of long objective, but that's okay. Investigate stability and change phenomena in natural selection and speciation. Let's start with the word phenomena. The plural is phenomena. The singular is phenomenon. What's a phenomenon? What's a phenomenon? Great, Chloe. Excellent job. If you didn't know that, you should write it down. I don't really have room here, and it's not really the point of the lesson, so we're gonna not gonna write it up here. But if I put them here, Mr. O, that's okay. That's all right. If you don't know what a phenomenon is, you should write down, just as Chloe says, that it's an event. So it's a thing that has happened in the physical universe that we can observe, and that's really important. It's an observable phenomenon. One way that we think about science is that it's an analysis of observable phenomena. These are only things that we can observe. I've said it before, and I'll say it again, and this is kind of the hill I will die on. There very well may be things in the universe, in reality, that are not observable with our senses. But those things are outside the realm of science. That doesn't mean they're fake or bad or somehow worse. They just are not observable by science. Okay, and so that doesn't come into the discussion. Doesn't mean they're invalid, but it's not part of the discussion in science. It can be and should be a part of the discussion in the rest of the realms of reality, but science is specifically dealing with observable phenomena, things that we can measure and record with our senses and the things that extend our senses, like microscopes and telescopes and stuff like that. So we're talking about natural selection and speciation, and we're talking about how, let's put how biological change occurs over time. I think that, to me, that is a way of rephrasing the ideas of natural selection and speciation, a way of rephrasing phenomena of stability and change in natural selection and speciation. So how does biological change occur over time? And thinking of phenomena, it has to be observable. So how do we observe changes in biology over time? You can go if you have to go. Watch the rest of this on YouTube so that you can get the information you need to do a good job. Oops. Okay, and so let me get this a little bit closer. Did that zoom in, Amelia? Now it's on the board more. Okay. Hey, thanks for knocking over my thing. You can always count on you. What's the one word and maybe kind of scary word that we use for this? The biological change occurring over time. Evolution. And the reason I don't think we should avoid that word just because it's you might even say a hot button topic. And I think one of the things I would like to do is kind of neuter its ability to scare people, because this is what it is. Biological changing occurring over time is one of the definitions. It's not the one we always use, but it's one of the definitions of evolution. Does anyone have handy in their notes what is the previous definition we had used? And it's not wrong. It's just we're just kind of looking at it from two different angles now. I like this other one too. A change in, I think, is how it started. Change in inherited traits in a population over generations. I know you said many generations. I agree with that. I just ran out of room. I have said before that this change in inherited traits, remember we had a special name that we used in the last lesson for inherited traits. What was that? Sorry, with an A. Almost. The trait itself, allele. So a change in allele, or a change in allelic, I'm going to put allelic frequency, because that's one of the things that your book actually, if you remember from your explorations, if you've done them, the book actually talks about allelic frequency. That is how often certain traits occur within a population. Something extremely important for us to know about natural selection, about evolution in general, is that it occurs over generations. It's not within an individual's lifetime. I'm going to put this in red because of not. I'm also going to actively try to mess up the colors of these markers because I was called out for that before. Not within one individual's life. It's not change within the individual. What do we call changes within the individual? There are lots of different kinds. But give me an example. How could an individual, think of yourself personally, how could you change over time? Grow, get old. What else?
Plastic surgery.
Plastic surgery, yes. With the classic examples, grow, get old, plastic surgery. Yeah, what's another one? Not within one individual's life. Trey, maybe we're both messed up, but I was thinking the exact same thing. I was like, I have to think of some other examples besides getting your legs chopped off, because that's the only one I could think of. But yeah, amputation would be a change within an individual's life, but these do not fall under the category of evolution. That's one of the things that people have misconceptions about evolution, is that, well, if this is true, then how come if whatever, I get deaf as I get older, how come my kids aren't born deaf? Or if I get my hand chopped off by a lawnmower, how come? Because it's not genetic. Exactly right. We talked about that last time. It's not. Those are not alleles. They can be traits without being alleles. They're not inherited traits. So this change over time, and we said before though, this is observable. Like if you can in a laboratory, you can get a petri dish of some kind of bacteria. You can change their environment and watch as their traits, as the alleles change over time. Some people will call that type of thing microevolution, and that's observable in a laboratory. I wouldn't say that no one could argue that, but it would be unreasonable to argue with that because we can see it happening in a lab in real time, like this population changes over time. And for this, let's just stick within the context of that so that we don't have to worry ourselves with the grander scale, although that it would apply to that too. So biological changes occurring over time. Now today, this is all kind of review. Today we are specifically talking about the mechanism or the engine. How does that actually happen? Why are there changes? What is causing the change that happens in these populations over time? Well, I want you to think about, I have two examples here. I brought these from my house. This is something I'm very proud of, maybe ridiculously proud of, but I got this Lego set building toy. Other brands are available, not a sponsor. But I got this Lego set. You can see its name is Lego Set 31058 Mighty Dinosaurs. And it says on here 3 in 1. Do you notice that? Mrs. Keim bought this for our son when he was sick, and she brought it home. And I don't remember that she specifically said this. I'll get out of your way so you can write down those words. I don't know that she specifically said this, but there was maybe a group understanding in my house that once you're done building the Triceratops, which is what my boy wanted first, that you could then build the Tyrannosaurus Rex. You could, but exactly. And your brother said the same thing because you have this Lego set at your house. Other brands are available. But you can't. I'll just give you a little sneaky hint. You definitely can't. You'd have to take apart the Triceratops, and because the person wanting the Triceratops is 4, that's unacceptable. We're not going to take apart the Triceratops. That's ridiculous. And so, over the course of 13 hours, I used me and my son share Legos now, I built this, which I think is pretty. I'm going to hold these for the camera. I am actually unwarrantedly proud of this. I use the instructions for this Tyrannosaurus Rex, and I built this Tyrannosaurus Rex, and you can see there are similarities and differences, right? I could point out the differences. Yeah, he's got thick thighs. He's a little bit thicker than this one, but you know what? Maybe the reason I'm bringing this up is that maybe that's better. And what do we mean by better? I'm going to write down that word big. Better. Who decides better? Me. Okay, listen, in this next example, so we're going to use the example of the Lego Triceratops and the Lego Tyrannosaurus Rex. I'm sorry, the 2 Lego Tyrannosaurus Rexes. But I've also used the example of at least my interpretation of fashion trends in high school, which that's going to be kind of pitiful. But who decides that this thick thighs or big back is better than the scrawny thighs or the small back on the one that was in? I had to make modifications because I didn't have the exact same pieces, but I think I did pretty good. I'm going to hand these around now. Okay. Who decides? Let's start with the example of fashion in high school. So when I was in high school, I'm a little bit afraid to draw this on the board even, but every single girl, I remember there are pictures, wore like 5 camisoles like layered together. Like that was fashion. And the jeans looked like this. Not quite bell bottoms. We called it boot cut, didn't we? And then these little slippers. This is not a good drawing. We had some Uggs, yeah, but they were just getting started. So who decided at that time that this was better? Also, a million necklaces, like just necklaces galore. And chonky necklaces, yes. But who decided this was better? It wasn't, Chloe said influencers, plural. It wasn't like, at the time, President George W. Bush did not say, now listen, y'all, I got a new fashion for you. Yeah, this is from, thank you, Tiana. Who is this? This is Hillary Duff. Other brands are available, as I said. And the caption specifically says worst fashion, although we don't all agree with that. But it's not like President George W. Bush got on C-SPAN and said, listen, y'all, we're going to have this be the fashion trend, right? It wasn't a dude. I mean, it certainly wasn't a dude, but it wasn't even a lady. It wasn't even an influencer, right? It's kind of culture as a whole. Like, this fashion, you might even say, died. It died. And now, this is not it. But when I first started working at this school, which was 10 years ago, believe it or not, the trend was this kind of jeans. My marker's dying, but this is skinny jeans. And everyone had on, I'm trying to draw like, oh man, like a flannel shirt, but it wasn't always flannel, but there were some kind of big like men's shirts, and I'm talking about teenage girl fashion, or I interpret teenage girl fashion, because I think that'll relate to you, but I don't actually, as you can find out, know what's going on. But then this, someone didn't just say it has to be this way. We all kind of, well, those of us who cared, collectively decided that the old one died, and now there's a new one, that it didn't stand up to the environment. Someone got made fun of, etc., etc. And now it's just hoodies. It's just hoodies and jammy bottoms is all I can draw. I'm not even going to bother to draw. You know what hoodies look like. But who decided it was better? Well, it's not a who. It's not a who. It's what. And what is it?
Society.
Yeah, that's true for the example I just gave. Let's say, yeah, okay, good. I'm going to put the environment. I like ecosystem, but I'm going to put the environment. And in that context, no one died. I mean, I shouldn't say that, but that was not, it was not life or death stakes. But in this environment, where'd my little Tyrannosaurus Rex go now that it's done being passed around? In this environment, we think, let's make up an environment where, let's say the one I built is better for this environment. Why? How? What it would be? Can you think of an environment where what are the differences, first of all? Thick, slightly thicker, and it's primarily... Yeah, no, don't point out that. No, it's what? What's the main difference? Like an idiot would. Yeah, it's coloration. So could there be an environment where this coloration, for some reason, is superior to this one? Yeah, maybe camouflage, right? Like maybe the foliage is red and blue here. I don't know. Maybe the foliage in this one's green. Maybe for whatever reason, as some organism wants to do, it stands out from its environment better. But for some reason, the coloration of this might be better. And now here is the key. That is determined by the environment. Beneficial traits, what do we call beneficial traits? Adaptations. Not only survive, but what? Are reproduced. Detrimental traits, there's not really a specific name for those, but detrimental traits, those traits that harm the individual, are not reproduced. Now, that brings me to another misconception, which is I'm going to put a squiggle in front of these. What's a squiggle probably mean? You see this in math sometimes. Approximately. Does this mean, so when I say they are reproduced, always, every beneficial trait is always reproduced? No, not always. You know, accidents happen, right? The lizard, even if it's very good at its environment, it falls off a cliff and it's dead. What about detrimental traits? Are they never reproduced? No, but on average and over time, over generations, the traits that are good for the environment, that make the organism more able to survive, and not only survive, but someone said thrive. What does thriving mean biologically? Reproduction. The traits that are not only allow the organism to survive, but to reproduce, are passed on to the offspring. It's all about, as most things are in biology, it's all about reproduction. The traits that allow it to be better at its environment are reproduced, and those that are not reproduced. And this doesn't happen within an individual's lifetime. It happens over generations. So there are two main ways that this can change. There are two main results, or two main causes. What can happen in the environment? The environment can change. And that can lead to two different things. One is speciation. That means it becomes, let's put the, I don't really want to use the word breakup. What do I want to use? The offshoot of two or more. Guess what the root word was. Okay, I like that. I want to be more specific though, and the specific is a clue too. Species. In this book and in general in biology, we use what's called the biological definition of species, which means if two critters can mate, they are considered one species. If they can mate and produce viable offspring. If they can't mate, or if they mate and produce sterile offspring, like a donkey and a horse make a mule? Does anyone know? Some ag person probably knows. But the mule is sterile. The mule can't itself reproduce. It can't later reproduce. There is one exception. But generally, those two things, a donkey and a horse, can reproduce, but their offspring is sterile, and so those are considered separate species. A tiger and a lion can reproduce, but a liger is usually sterile, so they're considered separate species. So things that can reproduce are considered the same species. Things that can't or reproduce with sterile offspring are considered separate species. And when that happens over time, that's called speciation. What else can happen if the environment changes? Extinction, exactly right. If the environment changes so much that an organism is no longer able, not just an organism, but that entire population is no longer able to survive, extinction. So the environment can change, and what else changes? What else can cause changes? What else could cause speciation or extinction? What are the two main genetic changes? Yep. That's not even the main one. I'm going to put that as number 2. No? You know it. We talked about it last time. It's the goal. It's the biological. Yeah. Sexual reproduction. We'll put reproduction / recombination. So when a mommy and a daddy love each other very much and they come together and their genes recombine, like you get some genes from the mommy and some genes from the daddy, that causes a change, which can lead to adaptations or detrimental traits. So back to my example, this will be the last thing. What if we think about these two things? Let's say they are separate species. They have a common ancestor. We've talked about common ancestry before. They have a common ancestor. What might have happened to make the speciation here, to make red and blue chonky fellow and green kind of limber gymnast fellow? What might have changed about the environment? Okay, yeah, maybe more or different kinds of food. But one thing that's really important that probably had to occur in order for them to stop inter-reproducing is some kind of, not necessarily an extinction, but some kind of either geographic divide, like a mountain range grows up in between them, or the land splits, or they have different food sources. Like some of them within the same species, remember, because they're both derived from a single species up here. I'm drawing like a tree in my mind, which you can't see because it's inside my mind. But their great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-granddaddies were one species, and maybe some of them started eating only, I don't know, rabbits. I don't know, I'm making this up. And the other one only eats iguanas. And for whatever reason, the iguana one is more suited to being green, the rabbit one is more suited to being red. That's a kind of speciation. Another thing, as I said, maybe they're physically separated. A mountain range grows between them, or plate tectonics causes the land that they move on to split. They can't swim. Lots of different things can cause speciation, but the environment changing is the general drive. So, in essence, and to wrap up, natural selection. Guys, look how his little legs are now. That's so cute. In general, natural selection is what we sometimes call evolutionary pressure. It's the engine that causes these biological changes. It can be due to the environment changing or to changes within the population, but generally, changes that occur are driven by natural selection, and the results include speciation and extinction. Do you have questions while I look through this to make sure I didn't miss anything extremely important? Your book does talk quite a lot about the word variation. That's a vocab word, and I would assume that you already know what it means, but what do you think variation means?
Different.
Yeah, exactly right. You're all human beings, at least as far as I can tell. You're all human beings, but there's variety among you, right? You're different from each other. You're diverse. And so the genetic recombination, we won't necessarily point at that one, but the genetic recombination that occurs when a variety of different individuals interact causes more natural selection, more traits that are different from their parents, and therefore may or may not be reproduced. Questions? Was that fun? I don't know. I think the Legos made it kind of fun, right? And it was nice the basketball boys were gone. Bye!